On this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, we're talking with Kontron about how NFV can be used to bolster network voice and video capacity.
Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.com.
Welcome to this week's NFV SDN Reality Check. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief here at RCR Wireless News. Today we are joined by Sven Freudenfeld, who is the Business Development, Telecom, and Cloud Infrastructure at the Communications Business Unit at Kontron to talk a bit about the virtualization world. Hey, Sven, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. Well, Sven is joining us from Germany, so hopefully with technology, this will all work very smoothly and there'll be no problems at all. But again, so Sven, maybe for those who don't know much about the company, maybe you want to give us a little overview of what Kontron does, and maybe some of your recent news that you guys have announced in terms of the virtualized space.
Yeah, so Kontron is a publicly traded company headquartered in Germany, here in Augsburg. We are approximately 1,500 employees worldwide. Mm-hmm. And we cover multiple vertical markets. So traditionally, we're coming from the embedded computing space, mm-hmm. Building components and solutions for multiple vertical markets. We have three major vertical markets: are communications, industrial automation, as well aerospace, defense, and transportation. As I said, we're building complete solutions for these different vertical markets. We are also premier partner of Intel. So the Intel IDF just took place recently. So we are pretty much on top of as most products are based on the Intel technology.
Got it. Yeah, obviously, working with Intel, I mean, partnerships are a big part of this virtualized world. It seems like every week there's a new partnership being announced, a new organization being announced. As you look at kind of these partnerships and your work with these different organizations, I mean, I know you guys are working with Alcatel-Lucent. I think you have a deal with Vantrix as well. I guess how important are these partnerships with different companies, different organizations in terms of kind of advancing this move towards virtualization, whether it's NFV and SDN and cloud? How important are those partnerships at this point in the process?
Correct. So, I mean, generally speaking, I mean, the whole infrastructure piece of the business is from the device, from the end user device, all the way back to the back end, which is the cloud infrastructure. Obviously, we need the glue in between of that. So we're talking about OpenStack virtualization, for an example, and other elements which are really bringing the solution to the market. Mm-hmm. The pure hardware does not solve a problem. So there is optimization being done to be optimized for deployments on that. Since we cover multiple vertical markets and we have industry expertise in all those different regions, we can bring the expertise for 4G deployment eventually in about 5 years. I mean, we have only 5 years to go to actually have a framework ready for a deployment for the first rollout of a 5G network. And since we're covering markets like industrial automations and as well the IoT strategy, the NFV story fits pretty nicely into it. Media processing is another big aspect of that. So if you take a look at all the different use cases, we have solutions that we can tailor together to help our customers to go to the market much quicker.
Got it. Yeah, you bring up some good points. I mean, obviously the 5G part and the IoT part, those are two kind of segments of the telecom space, at least, that have really gained a lot of attention over the past 6 to 12 months. And it seems like that's a big focus going forward. And it seems like the timing of that is really working well with this move towards virtualization, because virtualization, it seems like it's a big part of kind of supporting both 5G and IoT. I mean, it seems like those two technologies are really going to rely heavily on the ability for telecom operators to virtualize a lot of their aspects of their network to really support the advanced needs that these things are going to I guess, require. It does seem like the timing of all this is pretty convenient. I'm sure for you guys, it's been a lot of extra work as well, but it seems like it's all kind of coming together at a good time for everyone. Yeah,
correct. So, I mean, the backbone for the 5G solution is the NFV and SDN strategy. Yep. So in SDN, you need to have the elasticity to actually scale up and scale down your resources as you need them. And for NFV, you need to be able to move multiple functions into a standard environment in the data center, which is not very simply done, because when we're coming looking at the use case for audio and video, traditionally media gateways and session border controllers most of the time containing DSP functions. And with the current strategy on NFV and SDN, the target is to run on standard hardware, so x86 type of technology. And we've been able to address these concerns by working closely with Intel and using a CPU SKU which contained the GPU function built in to the processor, and when using a media SDK software layer to actually use that dedicated function as a media processing engine. And on top of that, we are actually able to manage it, because if you want to manage the peak hours for video streaming and so on, we need to be able to allocate resources as we need it. We may have a peak hour in the evening, and then during the night at 2 o'clock, there's nobody watching video. So this elasticity needs to be given, and in the DSP function today, we are not able to manage it in that way. What Intel did with the Media SDK and the Iris Pro technology, they gave a good framework to be able to move session border controller functions into a virtual environment. And this could be not only that, it could be also WebRTC, could be unified communications, and so on. So this are actually the first applications moving into a virtual environment, as they are not as critical as other functionalities. And since we are utilizing the graphic engine with GPU for video transcoding, how about the audio transcoding piece of that? And we purpose the GPU also for audio transcoding with a density which is acceptable to deploy media gateways into this type of environment.
Got it. And that's a big part right now, because it does seem like operators are definitely struggling, it seems, at least on the mobile side, struggling with this capacity concern, because again, they only have so much spectrum to use, and consumers, as everybody knows, are using more and more video, streaming more and more content, and even voice traffic nowadays is starting to be transferred over the data network with VoLTE and WebRTC and different things like that. So it seems like operators are definitely having to focus more on optimizing their data networks. And it seems like, well, obviously virtualization is going to be a big part of this. I guess, are you finding that operators are pretty open to kind of this move towards, bringing on more virtualization to kind of manage these needs and these requirements?
It's case by case. So we have a very successful story in Europe, working with UPC, which is part of Liberty Global. The software layer has been provided by Active Video Networks, which is, they call it the Cloud TV portion. And it's really virtualizing set-top boxes, bringing it into a cloud environment. The technology has been adapted very quickly. So we've been delivering content, or this platform is delivering content for about a year almost now. Of course, in the beginning, there was a bit of a reluctance. Because obviously Intel has been known as a processor vendor, not so much as a software vendor. But the whole package has shown that the functionality for media transcoding is very well suited to be deployed in the live network. Got
it. And obviously Intel is a big part of this. I mean, I know in the past, like you said, Intel's kind of been known as a hardware company, but with this move towards virtualization, it seems like you guys are doing a lot of work with them as well. They are becoming very central to this whole move towards virtualization. I mean, they're a big part of kind of the platforms that are being used and kind of the standards that are being brought together. It seems like Intel's definitely becoming a bigger and bigger part of the telecom space here.
Well, it's an ecosystem, right? If you deploy, it's a network function, and it's a software-defined network, meaning there's different ends to it. So if you take a look at the NFV scenario, so technologies like the GPU, virtualization needs to be supported by the software partners as well. For example, Red Hat, Mirantis, and so on. Everybody who's working in this virtualization or orchestration tool business. Of course, it can only be done if you create an ecosystem. And this ecosystem on the Intel side, they call it the network builder community. And what it really does is showing some real cases, use cases, to address one function at another. We won't be able to go in a virtual environment overnight. So we need to really look at which use cases make sense. and how it can be managed. So the cloud-based strategy is similar to that. I mean, the cloud orchestration is really the challenge there is the interoperability. Can I actually really manage my resources seamlessly? And this is, at the moment, still the biggest concern, to bring some functions into a standard-based environment. So that's why by addressing that upfront before deployment and actually proven that it's been working, it's a safer way and gives the confidence of customers to move in that direction.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, obviously that orchestration aspect of this is going to be a big part of this move towards virtualization, because again, these telecom operators have got this legacy equipment that's been, operating for 20, 30 years now and operating very well. It's already paid for the most part. So they don't want to give that up immediately. But again, they know they do have to move towards a virtualized environment to support these future services, to compete with OTT, things like that. So, but it does seem like there's going to be this kind of, 5 to 10 year period, maybe even longer, where there's going to be this legacy and this new stuff that has to be managed in between there for a period of time. That seems like it's going to be a bit of a challenge, definitely for I'm guessing software guys and hardware guys, everybody involved in this.
Yeah, I mean, each of the players we're dealing with or we're working with has different scenarios.
Yeah.
When you move into a virtual environment. So the private cloud is something what is probably a little bit more quicker to adopt than moving all your key functions, especially in telecom and network function virtualization, into a private cloud environment. Most likely, it will be it will not be a public environment at the moment. From a technology standpoint, the security aspect is another concern to raise. That's why we're looking at the main functions. And if you look at the rollout of 5G, I mean, video is definitely the first one to look at for increased capacity, more video streams, more devices being available. And then the next one of them on the list on the 5G technology is really the IoT strategy.
Yeah.
Because each market is their virtual environment. The Ericsson folks, for example, they call it network slices. So each vertical market has a different slice in the 5G network and needs to be secured, and it needs to also be able to do other functions than just a traditional voice and video.
Yeah, that's going to be a tricky part. You're right. The security aspect of this is going to be huge, and it seems like that's becoming more and more of a concern almost by the month, really. So that's obviously something you guys got to get in front of early, because those needs and those requirements, especially in terms of IoT and the connected car and different things like that, that's going to be a huge part that people are definitely concerned about. So that's going to be I think like a big challenge for a lot of companies going forward, is kind of managing that security need as this move towards virtualization and cloud kind of ramps up even more. So.
Correct. And then the aspect for high availability. So when we have a standard traditional telecom network, we have the 5 nines given. Now we're moving into a data center environment. So how can I guarantee my 5 nines? Sure, you can do it with standard servers, what you can get on the market today. But what sort of high availability and what kind of scalability you can get into that platform? Power consumption and scalability, that's the other 2 aspects. Not only cooling, but also maintenance, operations costs, and so on. So we took a stab on that, and we created platforms which are tailored to that, which are easy to manage, which are ready for NFV and SDN, including open source support and so on the back end. So creating private cloud environments, for example, and being compatible with OpenStack environments, not only that, but also VMware and so on. VMware is also trying to step into the market for telecom. And on the other hand, on the back end, we have devices which are really tailored for IoT. Mm-hmm. And we do, this hardware was our bread and butter in the past, but we're optimizing it in a way on how we're creating it, and also what layers on top we're going to be partnering with in order to bring the solution to the market.
Got it. I know I've talked to a lot of operators about this, and that's been one of their concerns, has been the whole 5 nines model. Now, obviously in the telecom space, like you said, they've been kind of used to the 5 nines model, for liabilities, availability for their networks. But that move towards virtualization, I've talked to some companies, and they seem to kind of indicate that perhaps, a 4 nines or a 3 nines model might be sufficient for what operators are trying to do. But again, from the operators, they do seem to be more comfortable with having 5 nines or whatever you want to do with the availability part. I guess, are we getting close enough to be able to? I guess, is there enough? Can people be confident enough that moving towards virtualization, that they're not going to lose any sort of reliability or availability that they're used to having in the telecom space?
Yeah, there's also 2 aspects to it. So the first of them is the resource management, right?
Okay.
So how do I optimize my resources when I need it? Are they going to be available? How can I provision them without any interruption? This is the first thing. This is really in the cloud environment and OpenStack environment for orchestration and so on. The second one is actually the actual physical hardware. How do I make sure that I don't have any downlink, or I don't have any CPU failures and so on. So what we're covering today in our platform without any software layers is already high availability and redundancy for power, for switching, for the node availability. On the OpenStack strategy, there's different flavors out there. So if you take a look, for example, at the Titanium platform from WindJava, which has integrated some of the telecom features for critical, minor, and major alarm to actually get alarm notification and also be able to automatically allocate resources when a resource becomes to a threshold. So these are functions which are unique to some of the telecom applications, versus some of the other applications which are more tailored to a data center environment may not need that granularity. But generally speaking, for the mission critical applications, voice, video, and data, that these are the points where we don't need any interruption, right?
Yeah. Obviously, like you said, voice is a big part of that, because I know consumers have a certain expectation when it comes to voice services, and if there's any sort of delay or lag there, consumers don't, they start calling their operator trying to complain about it. So that's always going to be, obviously, voice is not seen as as kind of the newest, latest kind of thing, but consumers still have expectation for voice. That's a good thing there about kind of the need for that to be out there. So
correct. And that's why the media gateways portion for the audio transcoding is one of the aspects. If I'm able to manage it, if I can actually scale up and scale down, same on the video side, and still guarantee the service, and I can do unified communications without any hassle, and move that function as the first one into a digital environment, it's already a given move forward to it. Now the end-to-end orchestration from data center cross data center provision and so on, this is probably still a longer shot. I mean, there's a couple of things, but it still needs to be addressed, I guess. But the market has shown there is already some good proof of concepts out there, looking at the ETSI specification on the different use cases. And we will make bigger offerings on our platform as well. So big data analytics as a service is also another aspect of that, right? How do you manage the data? Where is it going to be residing? And how quick can you process that? Elasticity is there also, because you need compute resources when you do the analytics. If you don't do the analytics, maybe you don't need the resources. So these are the 2 aspects on that. And we're working very close in collaboration with partners as well.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point, because obviously, automation is going to be a big part of this move towards virtualization, and with these analytics coming in, I mean, again, with these advanced networks, you can get more and more information out of the network, but it becomes almost an overload of information. So you almost need the automation in place to be able to handle what's actually coming in, and if you have to make decisions on what to do next, if something's going down somewhere, you have to be able to make that decision rapidly to kind of, again, make sure that the network stays up. And so, yeah, automation is going to be a big part of dealing with those new analytics coming in from the network as well. So a big part of the platform there. So it should be interesting how that plays out. Well, I guess maybe a final wrap-up question here before we get to the end of this here. As you look forward in this move towards virtualization in the telecom space and the work you guys are doing there, you've kind of mentioned some of the challenges already, I guess. But I mean, what do you see as perhaps for you guys, maybe the next big challenge that needs to be tackled before you can kind of, I guess, make the next step or kind of, I guess, continue to support this move towards virtualization? What do you see as perhaps what's keeping you guys up at night the most at this point?
So the first thing is that we have a roadmap which is tailored to what's been needed in the network, and a platform strategy which is aligning with what the service providers are requesting. Mm-hmm. Our previous business model, the past, or where we're coming from, is we usually sold or we provided components and solutions to telecom equipment manufacturers. Now that business model is changing because these traditional equipment manufacturers becoming software vendors to the service providers. And we need to align with what the service providers' requirements are in the data center, in the cloud, and make sure we meet up with our roadmap and strategy of a platform to be able to serve them the best efficient way, and also show them a way how they can reduce their operating expenses, but also their capital expenses in the network. Because this is still underestimated in some of the deployments, how rapidly video becomes very demanding on the network, and how quick can I get resources become available by not throwing additional hardware on top of it on standard servers and so on. So scalability, elasticity, and we are building platforms which are tailored for that.
Got it. Yeah, and obviously it does seem like that's very the key to that is obviously the kind of, I guess, the work, the conversations between the vendors. I mean, obviously you're working with your own vendors, but it seems like the vendor community needs to be more open towards working with each other when it comes to, because again, the operators have a certain requirements, and if everybody can't work together to meet those, at the end of the day, nobody wins. So it does seem like this is now requiring the vendor community to be more open and to work more together to meet those challenges. I'm sure a little bit different from what traditionally has happened, at least in the telecom space. But it's a big move, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Well, hey, Sven, we definitely appreciate the insight on this today. Obviously, this is a space that's moving rapidly, and you guys seem like you're pretty busy working on the processes there. So hopefully we can catch up again soon on the topic. But again, thanks so much for the time and insight today.
All right, thanks a lot. And thanks for having me.
Great, no problem at all. And have a great weekend there in Germany. And again, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's NFV SDN Reality Check. Thanks for watching, and please make sure to check us out again next week.
NFV SDN Reality Check with Dan Meyer is a production of RCR TV. To suggest show topics or to reach Dan, you can find him on email, dmeyer@rcrwireless.com, and on Twitter @Meyer_Dan. For more Dan, news on NFV SDN and everything wireless, find your way over to rcrwireless.com.